Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you, and thank you for joining me once again for another spirit review video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a new line of tequila called La Pulga. Now, La Pulga literally translates from Spanish into English as the flea, but in the Hispanic culture we'll use it to describe an outdoor market or a flea market as La Pulga. And this line was named that because there's a very famous outdoor flea market called La Pulga. This is just how it's known to all of us here in Fort Worth in the North Side area. And that flea market has been there going back to the 1940s. I remember it as a child. It's located right there on University Drive, just off Jacksboro Highway. And one of the owners, the co-owners of this, because there's three, Sarah Castillo, who's a very successful entrepreneur and restaurateur, because she owns like Taco Heads here in Fort Worth and Tinny's Mexican Cuisine, Side Saddle Saloon. And then you have Andrew De La Torre, that he owns a part of actually that flea market. And he's also a club owner. And then you have Steven Slaughter, and he's like a real estate investor and entrepreneur. Well, those three got together and decided, you know what, we're going to start sourcing some additive-free tequila. And that's a big thing nowadays because, to me, you know, just like in the rum world, you have a traditional way of making rums where they were, you know, slightly sweetened because it's a sugar refined process and they had a lot of excess sugar and maybe the distillation wasn't great, so they would add a little sugar back in the day. And so that's like traditional rum. They would always add a little sugar traditionally. But nowadays we're seeing some of the fantastic rums are pure rums, what I like to call pure rums. They don't add any sugar. They don't need to. If you focus on the proper, you know, production methods, you get plenty of sweetness without adding sugar. You get big flavors if you use different types of stills and that so on. And so when in the tequila world, we're starting to see that kind of renaissance as well, because you have things like, you know, Volans and G4 and El Tesoro, Fortaleza, that are focusing on additive-free methods, and they're creating some of the best tequilas on the market. Well, La Pulga is doing the same thing. It's coming out of NOM 1068, so that's the distillery 1068 number. They have also done Rey de Copas, which back in the day, when I remember going in the 90s when Rey de Copas was really, really good tequila. They still do that. They do Tequila 3030, another additive-free tequila, and La Pulga. And so La Pulga starts out on the launch with a Blanco and a Reposado custom bottle. Very nice as far as the custom topper, I should say. It's engraved with the L and P, comes with a little leather strap medallion that is very weighty. That's not inexpensive. And on the front it has the name, you know, the La Pulga. Let me get my glasses and I can read it for you. It says, yeah, Mexico, La Pulga, the pride of Fort Worth. On the back of that little medallion, it just says 1068, which is, again, that distillery number. So that is the Blanco, bottled at 80 proof, retail pricing about $49. Now, to create the Blanco, because, of course, every tequila starts as a Blanco, what they're doing is they're harvesting the Weber Blue agave piñas, hand quartering them, putting them into an autoclave and into a brick oven. And I think that's basically an autoclave is like a pressure cooker. So you're getting to cook it fairly fast, and then you go into a brick oven, and they say that the reason they do that is so that it gets thoroughly cooked. Because sometimes when you stack up in brick ovens, the ones up top, you know, if the steam's coming from the top, may get cooked, or if it's coming from the bottoms when they get cooked more than the middle. And so this way, when you go into an autoclave for a little bit, you're getting a equal cooking process, and then you're finishing in the brick oven or the hornos to, again, give it that traditional flavor, that really, again, well-baked agave. And of course, a well-baked agave almost tastes like a yam or a really sweet, thick, sweet potato type of thing. But once that happens, they're fermented. Of course, they go through a roller mill. The roller mill is going to shred those softened piñas into the fibers and the juice, and that's going to go into wooden, fermenters for about 3 to 7 days. Now, once it's, well, actually 3 to 6 days. From there, it gets distilled And pretty much the only thing to know beyond that is that the Blanco gets proof down to 80 proof. The Reposado goes into barrels for about 2 months to 7 months, somewhere in there typically. They say 2 months is the least, but typically it's 7 months, which is about normal. 7 months of maturation in a barrel. Then they proof it down to 80 and they bottle it. Now, the other thing I don't think I mentioned was their blender, Ali Ochoa. Ali Ochoa, I actually met her a long time ago. We became friends because we had a mutual friend that I would run in whiskey. I run in all sorts of circles. And one of my whiskey circles, I knew a guy that worked at TX Whiskey. Very knowledgeable guy, very sharing person. He had a big collection, some phenomenal bottles. He would always share with everybody. And so through our mutual friend, he knew where my trajectory was heading because I was going to be the blender for St. Sally. He knew I had a nice palate and stuff like that. So he's like, you got to meet Allie. And so one day he brought her to one of the tastings and I got to meet her and he's like, this is our new whiskey scientist. She's our whiskey blender. And to be honest, when TX Whiskey first launched their bourbon, it was not a good launch. It was kind of a rough first couple batches. But I think once they brought Allie in, she was able to kind of correct that. And so I started seeing the flavor profile get better. And I think that was probably because of her. But she's a great person. Again, solid, hands to have this brand in. So I think that's why they brought her on. But beyond all that, let's go ahead and get to the nosing and tasting, starting with that Blanco, 80 proof. Here we go on the nose. Again, additive-free tequila. There's nothing, no sweeteners, anything like that here. And it's certified. There's a little sticker right there on the front. Okay, on the nose. Wow. The thing that I noticed right away that you don't get all the time is that fresh baked, almost that baked agave when it's heavily caramelized. When I talked about it tasting like a yam, like a real caramelized baked yam, that's what you're nosing right here. A lot of that. A little bit of butter on top because it's kind of buttery. Big vegetal agave that kind of comes off like floral. Slightly soured on the... Oh, that's what that is. That's honey. A ton of raw honey. Oh my goodness. It was something sour in it, and I was trying to figure out what that was. There's a little sourdough, but there's a real natural raw honey aromatic here that once you name it, you're like, boom, that's exactly what's going on. So baked yams, honey, floral agave, light mint, and on this one I would call it a little, it's a sprig of spearmint. Little cinnamon, maybe a little touch of white pepper. And a little citrus oil, mostly lime. Very, very nice. Let's go ahead and taste it. That's good flavor. Good viscosity, medium, straight up medium viscosity. Inner's nice and creamy. Right away with that kind of honey agave. Honeyed agave is what it is. All that little light floral agave is in there, but it's behind it. And it is a raw honey, almost like honeycomb as well. When you get that raw honeycomb and you chew on that, that's in here. But that baked yam raw honey, that is exactly what's coming through on the palate. Cinnamon kind of swells just a touch on the mid palate. Feels very well entwined. Nicely balanced. White pepper kicks in after that. So that is definitely there. That little bit of spearmint that was talking about, again, it's like a sprig. It's nothing that's going to be super dominant. It's not like you're going to be like, boom, a lot of mint. It's in there. on the back end, it just kind of focuses a little more on a traditional agave note. So not that super caramelized, but more that fresh agave. Lightly vegetal, almost like how would you describe an agave flavor when it's fresh? Something like a fresh, somewhere between a broccoli and an asparagus on the flavor profile. If you lightly steam it, it's kind of in there. And that's what I pick up on the back end. Very clean though. Yeah, that little citrus that we're picking up on the lime on the nose is in there. And that kind of just kind of lingers. Again, not super heavy. It's more like a spritz of the oil. And that lingers. But to me, it feels very clean on the finish. Starts heavy with that heavy flavor of that honeyed agave, yam, and then it kind of cleans up on the back end. Yeah, that's lovely. All right. On to the Reposado. Average about 7 months on this one on the barrel maturation. Here we go on the nose. Okay. This one to me is pretty similar, but there's a little more on the mint on this one. And of course, a lot more vanilla, but again, you're going into a barrel, you're going to pull that note. But to me, this one's more of like you get a little caramel instead of the honey. There's still a little honey in it, but it's caramel honey combination. Baked yam is in there, but it's not as vibrant as it was on the Blanco. A little bit of that sourdough. White pepper, the cinnamon. And that real light floralness. Citrus, it might be in there. It's not super, it's not just jumping out on the nose, to be honest. This one more goes into that barrel profile where you get that vanilla, the oak. All right, let's go ahead and taste it. This one feels a little more viscous than even the Blanco. Medium, heading towards medium high viscosity. At 80 proof, that's pretty impressive. Caramel, a little of that baked agave, that little bit of that yam. The honey. There is a little more mint in this one. Again, it is spearmint, to whereas this one was one little sprig, this one was like 2, 3 sprigs. White pepper is still in there. The citrus here, it's not just lime on this one. This one's more of like an orange citrus in with a little lime. Light floral. That almost seems to get a little more covered up than it was on the Blanco. But again, it's just the barrel. That vanilla, that oak. To be honest, this definitely does not taste like 2-month-old. This tastes more like 7 to 9-month-old matured tequila. The one thing I'll say about both of these, and you haven't even heard me say it because I haven't even thought about it. Sometimes on lesser tequilas, you'll get an ethanol hit. You'll get that alcohol, right? That little rubbing alcohol. We kind of think of it like that. You'll get that on the nose or when you're breathing in. I like to breathe in through my mouth and then slowly exhale through my nose. Typically, I'll pull that somewhere along the way. That's not in either of these. And hopefully they remain, this character, because this does have a code, and it's on the inside label. It says lot EB23110T07. Lot ER06185. What is that? 85T1 or J1? I can't read those last two on this one. But that's the lot on the Blanco, and it's on the inside of the front label. So if you see those out there and it happens to match that, I would buy that. I'm definitely going to be looking for another bottle of this. But thank you as always for being here. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Of course, please join me over at patreon.com/LiquorHound, where you're going to get these videos 2 weeks early, so you can get out there and hunt these bottles a little faster than they're going to be on YouTube. Ad-free, lots of tier giveaways. I only have 2 tiers. It's like $5 and $10, not very much. But again, this isn't, I'm not trying to profiteer off this thing. I'm just trying to help support these bottles that I'm buying to review for you, because I don't get any, kickbacks from anybody, or nobody's sponsoring me, so I do it for the love of the game, all right? So thank you as always for being here. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you, regardless of platform, Patreon or YouTube. Keep leaving all those great comments, and I'll get back to them just as soon as I can. Everyone have a great day, and cheers.